Welcome to Your Fantastic Mind. I'm Jay Watson. This is a show where we explore the mysteries and the science of the amazing human brain. Resilience is a positive word. It's the capacity to recover from difficulties, to bounce back. But what does resilience mean when we are talking about the brain? This is a story of a community do-gooder who almost lost his life to violence. Here is his battle to help his life and his brain bounce back.
Honey, you're gonna be a movie star. Did you know that?
I've always been one to help other people. I've done tons of resumes for people and just help them the next step in life to get them forward.
At 10 o'clock on the night of October 30th, 2016, one of those people, helped by Russell Erickson, would return to his Clarkston home. Russell would answer the door to the person he knew and had helped, letting into his home a man who over the next hour would rob and almost beat him to death.
Police say that when they first came upon that victim, they weren't sure he was going to live. They said that he managed to escape through this window here. When they found him, he was lying in a pool of blood on the driveway.
I haven't repainted yet because that's the chemical they told us to use to clean the blood off the walls, turns the walls blue. It was a pretty traumatic night. The door was punched in half, and then he came in and he broke the bed. This is a different sleigh bed now because it doesn't have the posts on it, but he broke the post off my previous bed and just clubbed me with them relentlessly until I would pass out, and then if I'd wake up, he'd beat me again until I'd pass out again. And I went through that for about an hour and 20 minutes.
Erickson finally escaped through a window, but his attacker followed him and continued to beat him in his driveway, where neighbors saw and called 911. A police canine unit captured the attacker on a neighbor's porch.
I had a traumatic brain injury. The brain bleed was the worst part of all my injuries. My eye sockets were both broken and my nose was badly displaced, and I had a torn rotator cuff on the left side, and then I had broken ribs on both sides.
Erickson spent 4 days on life support.
He had blunt trauma with someone striking his head repeatedly with a blunt object. So he had bruising and bleeding in the brain and swelling of the brain. And there's tearing forces that occur within the small neurons or axons of the brain, and therefore individual fibers of the brain are torn and damaged permanently.
Dr. David Burke is the brain rehabilitation expert who treated Erickson.
During that recovery mechanism, swelling will occur. With the swelling comes a decrease in oxygen to parts of the brain that evolves over time, and therefore you can suffocate some of the brain in that early stages. You can squeeze the life out of some of the brain tissue from the swelling because it's got nowhere to go.
Parts of the brain can die, but Burke says the understanding of the regenerative capacity of the brain has shifted over the years. Take axons, the small nerves in the brain that send signals to its destination, like making your fingers move.
When I was in med school, we were told that's it. The axons do not regrow. But we now know that the axons do regrow, but probably not in sufficient quantity to regrow portions of the brain that are damaged, and therefore the reorganization of existing tissue is very much the recovery.
Russell did not lose function in his limbs, but because he was beaten all about his head, his injury to his brain involved many areas that were no longer functioning like they should. He had attention issues, common to those with TBIs. He had severe vertigo, sleep, memory, and speech issues. He could move about the world seemingly normal, but nothing was as it had been before.
There are things we can do to accelerate the healing of the brain.
Medications serve as a foundation for the healing of the brain. They can help those attention issues, altered sleep cycles, debilitating headaches, dizziness, forgetfulness, depression, even thinking that feels slower. All problems caused by the trauma to the brain.
Any problem with Forgetting mid-sentence?
When I get tired in the afternoon, I will have a hard time pulling a word out of my memory that I'm wanting to say.
Okay.
Medications support the brain and the person, making intense cognitive and physical rehab more effective.
The more you attempt to do what has been damaged, the more likely that the brain will reorganize. And in Russell's case, he's the most motivated guy that you'll meet.
Face the mirror. Ready? Step up. Good. Move back. And turn in your head right and left 5 times.
The work to get back what was lost
Excuse me.
is hard.
All right, 5 more seconds.
There is physical,
Gonna give you a little more resistance.
occupational, and speech therapy.
You're right on with that. You don't want to be labeled as a brain-injured person.
Yes.
You are a person who had a brain injury.
There is vestibular therapy to improve vertigo.
And look at the red light.
Almost 2 years after the night he nearly died, Russell has his life back. He returned to his job at 3M just months after the attack. So how is it that 2 people can have the same injury, but one will recover better than the other? One reason is genetics.
A great example is the boxing careers of Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. You know, arguably 2 of the best fighters ever, and they arguably punched each other same amount of time, same amount of, trauma to each. But Joe Frazier didn't seem fazed by it, and Muhammad Ali got Parkinson's disease and was, when I met him a few years ago, unable to speak, was having trouble walking, had really deteriorated.
In patients like Russell Erickson, there is something else that is harder to measure, something that does not show up in images of the brain or in measurements of the body.
I was given a little stone, and you put it in your pocket, and every time you touch it, you think of something to be grateful for.
He has a supply of gratitude stones for himself and just about everybody he meets.
For the longest time, I looked at these pictures and then I actually put them away so I wouldn't start relating to that's who I am.
He put those photos away, focusing on healing,
You back for some more patting?
letting go of the trauma. A conversation with a police officer just days after he was attacked illustrates that.
He asked me, how do you feel about this guy who did this to you? And I said, between you and me, I have to forgive him completely. And because I need all my energy for healing. And if I hold a grudge against him, then that's going to rob me of my healing.
Erickson still helps those in need, but he now meets them at public places, and his home has a camera surveillance system.
One thing that I think is critical is that people stop looking in the rearview mirror and look ahead. I say, you can't drive through life if you're looking in the rearview mirror, and if they're always looking at what they lost rather than ahead of what they can acquire, then the recovery is slow. I think Russell's like, let's go. He doesn't have rear view mirrors in his car. He took them off a long time ago.
Despite all he has been through, the man with rocks in his pockets and a smile on his face will tell you he's one of the luckiest guys around.
You can come out on the other side just as blessed or more blessed, even though you go through hard experiences.
So the one thing this week is something that could reduce your risk of type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, premature death, stress, even high blood pressure. That one thing is getting out in nature. Scientists looked at global data from 140 studies involving 290 million people from 20 different countries, including the US, looking to see if nature provides a legitimate health boost. They analyzed the health of people with the least access to nature to those with the most. And those with the most, well, they had lower incidences of several conditions and diseases. They also had lower blood pressure, lower heart rate, lower stress. They even slept longer. One of the more interesting findings is that being in nature dramatically reduces people's levels of salivary cortisol, a physiological marker of stress. This is one treatment that you don't need a prescription from your doctor. It is the most famous dance to come out of Argentina, Tango, a partner dance that emphasizes vibrant and playful movement and lots of improvisation. But Tango is also becoming known as a powerful tool for patients with Parkinson's disease. This story is about a Parkinson's brain on Tango.
I just saw her and she just did something to me. Something just went clunk, clunk.
The disco was Christie's in Cincinnati, Ohio, and the woman who made something go ka-kunk inside Lee Reeves was Jerry.
I kept begging her to marry me, marry me, marry me, marry me. And she kept saying, no, no, no.
The yes came 34 years ago.
And we danced our way through our marriage.
That was before Lee, a mechanical engineer, had a stroke. It was before Jerry, a registered nurse, noticed a change in her body.
I didn't really feel anything going on except just a twitching in my pinky. Sort of like a tick you might get in the face.
That twitching pinky led to a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease.
It was kind of devastating at first, you know. Well, it was devastating. It was just something to get your arms around.
Doctors don't know what causes Parkinson's disease, a slowly progressive neurological disorder that is caused by degeneration of neurons in the brain. Dr. Stuart Factor is the director of the Movement Disorders Program at Emory Brain Health Center.
The main neurons that die are dopamine neurons, and all the treatments that we have, nearly all the treatments are for replacement of dopamine in the brain.
Among its many jobs, dopamine impacts brain processes that control movement.
It's defined by motor symptoms: tremor, stiffness, slowness, walking and balance problems.
It's been 10 years since Jerry's diagnosis.
I'm doing pretty good. I think it's advancing a little bit now. Getting harder to follow lines.
She still paints, the latest, a family tree.
I'm going to put names on the big leaves of the different family members. You tie a knot in there.
Yeah.
Thank you. I sew, and I can't do as neat a job now. Writing is terrible. You can barely read it. And my voice has been modulated, almost not there.
Walking has replaced running. Last year, Jerry broke her hip in a fall. Despite the struggles, there is one constant.
All right, everyone, when you get a chance, grab a partner and start dancing.
It's less nightclub and more high school gym. But make no mistake, the gym at the VA in Atlanta is Tango Central.
5, 6, ready, and Tango. And Tango.
Parkinson's patients are paired with volunteers, from grad students to dancers in the community.
Am I messing up too much?
No, we're doing great.
I like it. It's fun. You know? Yeah. I mean, a lot of cool people.
Lee and Jerry have come twice a week for a few years, not just because it's fun, but because it is helping Jerry.
I've noticed a difference. It organizes movement better. And with the steps for Tango, you have to switch your thinking.
Emory Assistant Professor of Medicine and VA Research Scientist Dr. Madeline Hackney is the Tango instructor.
Tango.
She is also a former professional dancer.
And I knew that I was especially interested in the way the brain controls movement.
It's an unconventional approach with an unconventional lead scientist. But what the Tango can do for people with Parkinson's is significant.
I had this idea that dance might be something that could help people to move better and overcome various injuries because dancers think about movement so deeply.
There had already been some research on the effects of tango.
There was one that had shown that frail older adults, if they participated in Argentine tango, had improved in complex walking tasks afterwards, in comparison to an exercise control group. And so that was like a little piece of, a kernel of evidence that, okay, tango, interesting. And then there was another piece of evidence that showed that while people were lying in a positron emission tomography, a PET scanner, they were doing tango-like movements to a very rhythmic beat. There was increased activation in the putamen of the basal ganglia, which is the part of the brain that is most impacted by Parkinson's disease.
Dr. Hackney's first pilot study on tango for Parkinson's patients was 12 years ago. She modified the dance and the steps to make it safe, yet hopefully effective.
First of all, we looked at 20 hours of tango over a 12-week period versus 20 hours of a chair exercise class, which is the traditional class that was offered at the time. Improved balance and gait parameters. So it improved balance and walking.
Hackney's study showed that after the class, tango dancers with Parkinson's were able to walk further, faster, and longer than before the class. Standard clinical motor exams to measure balance also showed improvements that were also retained. So does it have to be tango? Well, Hackney says that the foxtrot and the waltz are just as effective, with one difference: this. Tango patients were able to get up from a chair and walk more easily and quickly. That is no small feat in a disease marked by mobility issues. Hackney says the improvisation that tango allows is another plus for patients. Functional MRIs, which look at blood flow in the brain to detect areas of activity, are now being used to learn what brain networks and areas change after dance rehabilitation in people with Parkinson's disease. There is no definitive answer yet, but Hackney thinks the findings will confirm what she believes.
Dance itself is a form of cognitive rehabilitation. When people dance, and especially in the tango, they have to use their brains in a very, very particular way. They have to remember things, they have to understand timing, they have to understand how to put a movement to music. And in a way, it's a form of cognitive training. And I think if we can see that in our brain, that'd be really cool.
It's not just that it works, it's that this class makes people feel good.
It's not about people being patients in the room, it's just about people being people together and enjoying something together.
For one couple, it continues what began in a Cincinnati disco all those years ago. Dance cannot undo the loss, but it can restore confidence and connection step by step. We all have deadlines, whether it's a work project, emails to return, laundry to get done. So then why do we stalk high school friends on Facebook for 2 hours? Why do we go to the fridge for the 5th time thinking we'll see something we didn't see before? The reason? Procrastination. And here's one definition: the voluntary delay of a task we intend to do and know that we'll suffer as a result. In a study in the journal Psychological Science, they've shown that procrastination tends to run in families. It is in our very genes. But even if we don't inherit it, most of us tend to put stuff off. And that's because we care more about the present than the future. That's the way we're wired as human beings. The present is now, I'll worry about now. So here's advice for next time you're procrastinating. Take a step back from your life and look at the big picture. What you've been putting off: going back to school, exercising, laundry, and then comes the hard part. Do it. Now to something all of us do and probably rarely consider: blinking. Scientists say we blink on average 15 to 20 times per minute. That's 1,200 times per hour and 28,800 times per day. But for thousands of people, the blinking gets out of control, leaving them functionally blind. The rare neurological disorder is called Blepharospasm. Here's one woman's story.
You know, when you're young and the world's wonderful and nothing bad is going to happen.
They are the pleasures of life in retirement.
Although I've worn glasses since I was in 4th grade, so I mean, in that sense, I've had eye limitations.
A spontaneous walk on a brisk spring day.
Everything starts from prayer. The print is a little bigger on this one. I could handle this one.
A leisurely discussion of a well-loved book.
It is not how much we do that is pleasing to God, but how much love we put into the doing. That's nice.
For Nilda Rendino, books and walks and even watching TV are newfound gifts after 25 years spent like this.
This is DYS number 3100, enrolled at Emory University on September 20th, 2017.
This was Nilda when she arrived at Emory Brain Health, a 75-year-old woman who had been living her life with her eyes closed most of the time.
And so it can be extremely disabling. In fact, when it gets bad enough, we say that people can be functionally blind because they can't keep their eyes open.
What is happening to Nilda's eyes and face in this video, the spasms, the blinking, the eyes that won't open, is due to a condition called Blepharospasm. Emory Brain Health's Dr. Haider Jinnah.
In blepharospasm, the muscles surrounding the eyes are overcontracting, so they are doing more than they should. But the problem is not in the muscles, the problem is actually in the brain's way of controlling your blinking. Somewhere along the line, the brain sends signals for your blinking that are too much. They're too exaggerated in some way. And so you blink longer, you spasm, and your eyes may blink closed and they don't open for you, like in Nilda's case.
Nilda was diagnosed 20 years ago. That was after 6 years of going doctor to doctor, after giving up driving and reading and even watching TV.
And I was lucky because people who went through that same situation were often told that it was in their head, and not meaning that it was neurological, but that they were, had psychological problems. Some people were hospitalized for their mental problems.
Next thing I want
a rare condition without a known cause or cure. Blepharospasm usually begins sometime after the age of 50, affecting 40 to 50,000 people in the U.S., with twice as many as that thought to be misdiagnosed or undiagnosed. When she finally found out what she had 20 years ago from a doctor up north, Nilda remembers when he told her the treatment.
And he said, well, you get injections around your eyes. And I said, that's the good news.
The treatment is botulinum toxin, and the way it works is by getting into the areas where the nerves control the muscles. And what it does is it slows the nerves down. It doesn't really paralyze them. It slows them down so that their communication with the muscles they control is less forceful, if you will. I tell patients that it's like a local muscle relaxer. That's a little bit simplified, but that's really what it's doing. It's working locally to calm the overactive muscles.
Botox is the most well-known brand of botulinum toxins. While injections help the spasms, for 20 years, Nilda's eyes still stayed closed most of the time, until her husband Ron drove her to see Dr. Jinnah from their home in North Carolina.
She has also a feature of blepharospasm that maybe only 10% of the patients have, and that's called apraxia of eyelid opening. The eyes close, and then they won't open by themselves. And the reason for that is because there's a spasm in the skinny muscle of your eyelid that goes right across here. And if that spasms while the eyes are closed, it can't roll up over your eyeball.
A few months ago, Jinnah changed the way she had been injected and included Nilda's eyelids. The results have been life-changing.
And it's been like unbelievable. Unbelievable. My neighbors who are used to seeing me going around with a visor and sunglasses all the time didn't know I had eyes, They said, your eyes are open. I said, yes, my eyes are open.
We were with Nilda 3 months after her newly altered injection plan. The results were beginning to wear off.
I noticed that your eyes are closing as this light is on you. What impact does it have?
If bright lights are on my eyes, they will close. It's not just a blink, they close. I'm having problems keeping my eyes open because of the light.
TV is becoming problematic again.
I'm not really, able to keep them open long enough to follow the story.
At her visit, Nilda has big news for the doctor.
I drove a couple of times in the neighborhood.
Is that a new thing for you?
Oh, yeah.
There's an exam.
I mean, I can see that you have a little bit of extra blinking. It's not too bad. I see that some of the blinks are a little bit slow and the eyes don't want to open sometimes.
Then the injections.
You ready?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I always do the eyelid first.
Which Nilda says don't hurt that much.
No, not really. I mean, obviously you feel it going in, but I haven't had surgery, so that's not an issue. And some people, it hurts more than others for some reason.
And then she's finished.
All right, well, let's plan for next time then.
Injections and an almost 4-hour drive every 3 months is not a cure, but it's a big quality of life boost. And it certainly gives new meaning to the phrase, eyes wide open.
It's been a great 3 months. And we're going on another cruise and I want to be doing well. You know that this is something you're going to live with for the rest of your life. But this is it. This is great.
So we know that parts of the brain aren't talking to each other like they should in people with blepharospasm. Hopefully research will lead to more effective treatments for this lifelong disorder. As for Nilda, well, she and her husband went on a cruise. She reported back to us that she enjoyed and saw all the beautiful sights along the way. After years spent in darkness, it was an incredible gift. That's going to do it for us this week. We'll see you next time on Your Fantastic Mind.